Hello, welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. This is our match preview. Newcastle head down to Brighton for what is arguably the biggest game of the season, probably for both sides, on Saturday evening. Just a heads up, we are recording this on Tuesday morning because I stupidly booked the rest of the week off thinking it was the international break, and it turns out it wasn't, and it's now the biggest game in Newcastle's recent history. So, yeah, I'm joined by Rich from no, without
Sussex Live.
I was going to say Sussex Live. Don't worry, I'll edit this out. We'll try that again. It was in my mind. I was like, it's just how much? Yeah, we'll try that again. I'm joined by Rich Mills from Sussex Live, who covers Brighton. You may recognise him or his voice from our relegation special that we did a couple of weeks ago. And on that episode, you said, and I'm quoting you, you said you were bricking it. It's funny what a few weeks can do, because after that Southampton game, I suspect you might be feeling a little bit better than you were when we recorded the relegation special.
Yes. Yeah, the result on Sunday was exactly what Brighton needed. It was back to their good old pragmatic approach of not having as much possession, not as many chances on goal, and their expected goal tally was actually below Southampton's, which is basically if they want to win a game, that's mostly what needs to happen. So, yes, a lovely, nice little injection there to calm some of the nerves, but the bricks still haven't gone away completely.
Yeah, the nerves on Tyneside are absolutely roaring. I don't think anyone is confident going into this game. I mean, you mentioned there that actually Brighton created less chances against Southampton, but I said to a colleague yesterday, I think they'll get 3 or 4 maybe against Newcastle, the way things are, just because Newcastle are lacking confidence. There doesn't seem to be any real sort of plan. And there's always this kind of, and it's a bit cliche, but there's always this kind of thing that when you need the tide to turn, you want to face Newcastle. So, for instance, if you're a goal scorer who hasn't scored in 10 games, you want to face Newcastle. And it sounds daft, but this goes back seasons. It goes back years where it seems to be, if you need something to happen, just play Newcastle. And I do fear that Brighton's moments of actually turning these chances into goals and getting a big scoreline will come on Saturday and really dent Newcastle's chances of safety.
It's interesting you say that, because I think Brighton fans have been waiting for that all season. And if you say that's going to happen, then that's music to my ears and Brighton fans' ears. But the thing is, so this is what I'll ask you after my little point. But Brighton, yeah, they seemingly spring results when you don't really expect it. So they beat. I mean, sorry to rub salt into the wound. At the start of the season, obviously Brighton got a 3-0 win at St James's Park. They were great. That was kind of when people, Tarek Lamptey kind of properly, to quote Micah Richards, burst onto the scene. He was fantastic. And Neil Maupay scored twice, and Aaron Connolly scored as well. And then they had to wait like 2 months or so for the next win, and that was away to Aston Villa, who were, had briefly been top of the table and, were high flying, were pushing for a top 4 spot. And then they had to wait until mid-January for the next one against the unpredictable Leeds. And then they got 2-1 on the trot against Spurs and Liverpool, and then against Southampton. And also what was interesting was Brighton took the lead, and they've dropped 17 points from winning positions this season. So everyone was like, when Southampton scored, here we go again. But they managed to hold on. So, but if you look at kind of the previous results of Brighton, they haven't beaten. They picked up 1 point against Crystal Palace of the 2 games. They drew against 10-man Sheffield United. They've lost to West Brom. They drew twice with Burnley. They drew 0-0 twice with Fulham. They just haven't been able to beat the teams around them. So, even though the recent result was a very good one, I don't know if you can extrapolate from what's happened before as if it's just going to be an easy win, because the way to beat Brighton, if you're especially at the Amex, is you can just sit back, soak up the pressure, and hit them on the break. So my question to you would be: do Newcastle have that ability to do that?
If you'd asked us a few weeks ago, I would have said yes, with Almiron and St. Maximin the side. But it's strange because you would look at the players they've got. You would say Ryan Fraser, yes, but it just the system that they're playing at the moment is the same system that was built around St. Maximin, Callum Wilson, and Almiron, and it worked fine. They're good on the counter. This system doesn't fit the players they've got, and for most, it needs to be changed. Steve Bruce seems reluctant to. He said as much after the Aston Villa game that he doesn't look like he's going to change it going forward. And you know, in a podcast after that Villa game, it was 1-1. I spoke to my colleague Lee Rydan, and we both agreed it was kind of like putting square pegs in round holes. It just doesn't fit. Individually, yes, they probably have got the players to catch Brighton on the counter. I mean, Ryan Fraser is quick and what have you, but when he's deployed as a false number 9, as it's like to be called these days, he's ineffective because he's a winger and he wants to be out on the wing, and then you're left with a massive space in the middle. And I think if they change the system and put the players in the right positions, then yes. But as I say, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And I just fear that Steve Bruce will stick to what he's been doing recently and hope it works, which it hasn't done. I mean, you look at the last 10 games, Newcastle have picked up 9 points. Brighton have picked up 15. So, coming into this, we all know Newcastle have only won 2 since December in the league. It's everything is pointing to a very, very upsetting end to the season, and I can't see it getting any better on Saturday.
In terms of the injuries that you have to Almiron, St. Maximin, and Wilson, how badly do you need them back? And is there a worry that the kind of the intervening period where they're not there, you could slowly fall into the relegation zone, and then you're playing catch up?
I mean, first of all, we weren't picking up any points with them in the side, but of course, Newcastle are always a bigger threat with them in the side than they're not. My biggest worry is that Steve Bruce said after the Aston Villa game that we've got some big players coming back, and that should give us something to focus on. And instantly, something went off in my head and was like, but that's not right. That's not what should be being said here. It should be saying, if you're Ryan Fraser, if you're Jacob Murphy, come and show me that you're good enough to keep these players out of the side when they're fit. Come and show me you want this shirt, this place in the side, and there's points to play for. This massive game on Saturday. The last 2 against West Brom and Aston Villa were huge. Newcastle picked up 2 points. Should have been aiming for 6. And I just think if that is the approach where, it is literally, let's just kind of get through these games. Let's get through to next month when hopefully we'll have Almiron, St. Maximin, Wilson back, and then we'll kick on. It just doesn't sit right with me. I don't think it sits right with many Newcastle United fans, because at the end of the day, everyone's got to deal with injuries. You guys have got picked up a couple. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Adam Lallana has only really just come back, and he's been superb. And everyone's got to deal with injuries, and to set your stall out and say we're waiting until XYZ come back in. I just think it just sends off the wrong vibes to your own squad, to your fans, and to the opposition as well, and those fighting for safety alongside you.
So, if I would ask you to put your managerial hat on, is with the current crop of players that you have, what kind of system do you think you should be looking to employ to make the most of the strengths that you do have?
Yeah, well, I mean, Steve Bruce seems, he wants to keep that formation, that set up. So fair enough. The kind of the 2 wide men in the man in the centre. It's just about playing the players in the right position. Play Dwight Gale in the centre. Play Ryan Fraser out on the wing. Keep Joe Linton out on the right. He did it. He had Mings in his back pocket really for most of the game against Villa, which is saying something because Mings has been brilliant all season. So by all means, if you want to keep that system, do that, but just deploy the players in the right position. It just doesn't make sense to have someone like Dwight Gale out on the wide. It's like having Morpay out on the left or the right. It doesn't make any sense, because they're best when they're in a central role, running onto the ball, holding onto the last man. That's where they're best. That's how you're going to score goals, and it's frustrating to see. So with that in mind, that's what I do. I mean, I'd like to see an old-fashioned 4-4-2. To be fair, two wingers, Andy Carroll and Gale up front. Just old-fashioned. Let's just get the points on the board. But if Steve Bruce doesn't want to do that, that's all right. Fine, he's head coach. Just play the players in the right position, because if you look at the heat map against Villa, and bearing in mind, like I mentioned previously, Ryan Fraser was deployed as this number 10 role, false number 9. The heat map shows him out on the left. So it's like instinctively, that's where he wants to be. Of course he does.
Yeah.
He's put in 101 crosses this season for Newcastle, and he's barely even played with injuries and suspension and what have you. He's put 101 crosses in. He's something like 24th in the whole league, and the players above him have all played twice as many minutes as him. And it's just like my head hurts just thinking about Ryan Fraser in a central role. He's the best crosser of the ball you've got, and I just think just play him on the wing, and Newcastle will instantly look more threatening. But Steve Bruce, I think he may stick with the same players and the positions he had them against Villa, which would just leave the likes of Dwight Gale totally ineffective against Brighton.
Was there a modicum of comfort with how Newcastle finished the game against Villa? Obviously, they grabbed a goal right at the death, but I switched on for, I think, for the last 10, 15 minutes, and I think they hit the post as well, and they looked like they were had a bit more incisive than maybe in the past. Was that fair to
Yeah,
say?
there was a bit more urgency towards the end, and Alan Shearer mentioned it on Five Live, but it's no good turning up for the last 5-10 minutes against the Villa side, who are effectively a one-man side. Without Jack Grealish, they haven't got that spark. So you've got to go against these sides, and you've got to go against the sides like West Brom and try and win. And against Brighton, and I look at the way they played against West Brom specifically, or Wolves the week before, who haven't done anything special this season, and if they set up with the same approach, the same energy, which is lacking, then I do wonder if that'll suit Brighton, because they want to win. Obviously, Brighton want to win. I don't say Newcastle don't want to win. I just think the approach is wrong, because they just don't look energetic. They don't have that urgency. It's like, do they realise they're in a relegation scrap yet? And I'm sure they do. The comments from the manager, the comments from the players, obviously, they know what they're fighting for. But on the pitch against these sides, the last couple of games, which have been winnable, they've just lacked that spark and that energy. And I just wonder, what's the contrast to how Brighton are playing and how they've played in the last few games?
Well, I'd say just in terms of Graham Potter's demeanour, he just exudes this kind of calmness, and I do think from an outsider looking in, what I like about him is that he's always staying positive, and he never lets he never goes after referees for certain decisions or complains and stuff like that. He's just like, those are the uncontrollables. We have to focus on the controllables. And I think you keep hearing it from the Brighton players. They keep believing that it's going to come good. And I think Leandro Trossard, who scored the winner, a really good one against Southampton in the 2-1 win, he said this was just, this is finally, our efforts are paying off. Obviously, that's just a one win. But yeah, I do get the sense it's a happy camp. But things can change very, very quickly. I think I said in the previous one on your show that Brighton were 10 points clear of Fulham. They've beaten Spurs, they've beaten Liverpool. And then within a few weeks, they were out of the relegation zone on goal difference ahead of Fulham. So things can turn really, really quickly. Sunday was a timely win for Brighton, but as I said again, I still don't think that is a guarantee that they'll come away with the 3 points on Saturday night.
I mentioned Lallana there just briefly. I've been just impressed by him. He just looks no disrespect to Brighton, he just looks a different class. He looks like he could still be at home in a top 6 side, and I think he's made a big difference. He's got that. I don't know what it is. He's just got something about him, and I think a lot of people. I know Newcastle were linked to him, and fans were a bit like, he's going to cost a lot. His injury record isn't great, and all that. What have you? He's coming towards maybe the latter years of his career. But I tell you what, the last few games that I've watched of Brighton, and I haven't watched the whole games. I've just caught them briefly, but he looks like he is really making the difference.
Yeah, so I'd say especially the last 2 games. So he got his first goal for the club. Just quick rewind. He signed for Brighton in the summer on a free transfer from Liverpool, 3-year deal, and I think people were very happy. Obviously, getting him on free is great. There was a little bit of a worry because he's had so many injury issues. I think between him and Danny Welbeck, another player Brighton signed on a free transfer, they've had close to 30 injuries between them over the course of their careers. So there was a little bit of a gamble, but there was definitely signs early on that Lallana was good, but he picked up an injury, I think, in the first game against Chelsea, and then over the course of the next few months, he kept having a recurring groin issue. And that was particularly highlighted when he came on against Liverpool in late November. He came on as a substitute in like the 50th minute and then had to be subbed off again because his groin flared up again. And then also, just to add a little bit more, his finishing has been pretty bad, I think, up until recently. And then, so he had also had COVID for a few weeks over the new year. And then he was kind of slowly been put back in. And then the last 2 games, he got his first goal against Leicester for the club in the 2-1 loss. And then played very, very well against Southampton. And that was the first time in a while that he's done back-to-back 90 minutes. He's only done that. He's only completed 90 minutes 5 times this season. So, but like you say, at times he's been different class. The last 2 matches, the first half against Leicester, Brighton were really good, and Lallana was like the composer, in front of the orchestra. He was just conducting everything. It was really, really good. He just seemed to have a bit more time on the ball and just like an awareness and was feeding his teammates, not literally, but yeah, he was just a conduit for everything good, and he plays an attacking midfielder against Leicester, and then against Southampton he played a little deeper lying role, but was equally as effective. So if he can continue that form, then I do think that Newcastle could be in a bit of bother. It's just if he can stay fit and continue that high level of performance, because yeah, if he can keep that, then he will be a massive part of Brighton's chances of staying up.
I just worry for Newcastle in that position. I mean, Jeff Henrik came in; he's not done anything. We've got Isaac Hayden, who's brilliant, but he's more defensive than anything else. And then John Joe Shelby, who you don't know, what kind of John Joe Shelby's going to turn up. If he's on his day, then brilliant. But they're very rare. And I think right now Newcastle, they need players to step up and be counted. They need players to to take games by the scruff of the neck. And it goes back to what I said about that Villa result. You can't be just turning up with 5 minutes left on the clock. You need to be turning up from the word go. And of course, Steve Bruce picks out positives. He says, he thinks that it would have been cruel to lose the game against Villa. And we've seen him talk about positive first halves against Manchester United, which spot on. It was. There should have been 2 or 3 goals up. But at the end of the day, the little graphic in the top corner is what counts, and if you don't score your chances, as Brighton know, then you're not going to pick up points. Is that still Brighton's biggest weakness, do you think, not converting their chances?
100%. I think, I alluded to it last time. I haven't quite checked the updated one, but before the Southampton game, in terms of expected points table, Brighton would be 5th. I mean, what more do you need to say? And I think Martin Keown said over the weekend on match day 2, something about Brighton had created 122 chances and hadn't converted from them. So in recent times, so it's just, yeah. The problem is that I mean, Brighton spent 20 million in the summer of 2019 on Neil Maupay. He scored 10 goals last season, which was below his expected total by a few. This season, it's been a little bit. I mean, he's been on 7 goals for a long time. He's been on 7 goals since mid-January, and he just doesn't really, at times, look like an out-and-out striker. He just sometimes has. He just seems on different wavelengths for some of his teammates, and he invariably maybe makes the wrong option. If I'm being a little harsh, he works his socks off. So credit to him for not sort of moping about. He really moping about. Sorry, that's poor. Wah, wah, wah. So yeah, I mean, but it's not just him. It's a collective responsibility for everyone to chip in with goals, and they haven't been doing that nearly enough. Danny Welbeck, he's below his expected goal tally. Aaron Connolly as well. I mean, Brighton missed 2 penalties against West Brom. It's not, it's just that is their Achilles heel, and the problem is they just have to work so many openings at home, especially for them to take them. And if they don't, then often just teams are more clinical the other end, and then they're punished.
Yeah, well, it's Newcastle next for Maupay, so you might have a bit of success. And I also, I mean, I've got it written down there. You mentioned the fact that Brighton don't beat teams around them. That's Newcastle's biggest weakness as well, because they just can't beat teams around them. I mean, they got beat off Sheffield United. I tweeted after the West Brom game. Now, with the 45 points played for so far against the other 9 sides in the bottom half of the table, Newcastle have just claimed 16. And then you look at the likes of Palace. Palace, have got a really good record against the sides around them. And it's when you're battling for safety and relegation, look, it'll be the same for Brighton fans as it is for Newcastle fans. You want to be more than a mid-table side, but at the moment that's probably the aim. And to get there, you've got to beat the teams around them. And it seems Brighton are much like Newcastle. They just struggle. I mean, Newcastle struggled to win anyway. So I think that's one of the biggest worries for fans in the weeks to come, because Newcastle's running is really difficult. The likes of Leicester to come and Arsenal. The running is really scary. So Newcastle need a win on Saturday. No ifs, no buts, no excuses. Newcastle need a win. And the fallout could potentially be huge. I mean, the fans will not be happy if Newcastle lose, and understandably, because you just worry. I mean, are Brighton looking at this game A as a must win, and B, are they looking at it as they come into this game as favourites?
The favourites one is hard to say, because Graham Potter just sort of says the same thing. Every game is a massive game, and we don't underestimate anyone. I'd say before Sunday, Brighton fans would have said the Newcastle game was a must win, and I still think it is probably the biggest game of the season. But also considering the fact that Brighton, after the international break, they travel to Manchester United, then they host Everton, and then they're away to Chelsea. So, that's a very tough run of games. I think they have Sheffield United away at the end of that month, so that could be maybe a bit of a reprieve. But I'd say this is 100% a must-win game for Brighton, just to keep that momentum going and get them a bit more breathing room going into the international break, because that might feel like a long gap. I mean, it's probably close to around 2 weeks in terms of one game to the next. So must-win game. I think maybe they're slight favourites going in, but again, it's important to say that Brighton have won once this season at the Amex, against 1-0 win over Tottenham in January. But They haven't won. The last time they won before that was back in June against Arsenal. Their home form is awful. It was, I believe, before they beat Spurs, it might have been the worst in the Football League this season. So if Newcastle are looking to pick up points, this is not a bad place to go.
You say that, but I think a lot of Newcastle United fans will be screaming at their phone or speakers saying exactly the same the other way around. I mean, Newcastle have what are we looking at here? So Newcastle have not. I mean, just. I mean, there's no point looking at home and away form because in general, it's just pretty dismal. I mean, they've won 4 at home and 3 on the road, but they haven't won. I mean, they beat Southampton at home back on February, but then it was all the way back to West Brom on December the 12th, and it is only 2 wins in what is that? It's like 17, 18 games for Newcastle, and it's just dismal to watch. And if you are a neutral listening to this podcast, I mean, I don't know what you would be, but if you are, you're watching it, this is not the place to be. This is not the place to be if you want to listen to 2 chaps talking about good, decent football and their teams doing well, because neither side appear to be. Although we are wearing the same colour jumper, so that is something.
If I could, interject, Andrew. Who would you say, if this is possible, who would you say are the kind of danger men that Brighton need to look out for?
Ryan Fraser, I think he's got a point to prove. If Jacob Murphy starts, which many fans are hoping he does, but I mean, again, it's anyone's guess. I think he, as well, is someone you have to watch out for. He came off the bench and was lively, hit the bar, and then he set up Carroll for the not Carroll, he set up Lascelles, sorry, for the header. He needs a new deal in the summer, so he's got something to prove. They're the 2 really, because you look around the team. Steve Bruce is probably likely to pick, you would say, the team, maybe give or take Murphy, thrown in the same team that he played against Villa. So there's no one that really stands out. Shelvey needs a good game. He puts himself about a bit, but we're still waiting for him to kind of step up and create the chances that Newcastle need. But they're missing their 3 best players, and that's not an excuse because, as I said right at the start, you've got to go through injuries. It's all now about those players who have replaced them stepping up, proving they're worth a spot on that team, and that's what Steve Bruce has got to do. That's what I would like to see him do. Not say, as he has done in recent weeks, we're missing Almiron, we're missing St. Maximin, we're missing Callum Wilson. Let's talk about the players who you have got at your disposal, because you've still got some good, decent Premier League players there. I mean, Jacob Murphy, with the right arm around his shoulder, could still be a very good Premier League player. Ryan Fraser, questions over attitude and what have you, but there's no questions over his ability. I mean, he's superb when he gets the ball to his feet and he's down the wing. He's got speed. He's got everything a good player needs. So I think we just need to see confidence built up into them, and hopefully, from a Newcastle point of view, that pays off on Saturday evening. But yeah, definitely Ryan Fraser, and if Jacob Murphy gets the nod, then I'd say them 2 are probably the ones to watch out for. But it all just depends on who Steve Bruce decides to pick and how he approaches the game, really.
How are Newcastle at both ends on set pieces?
They're not too bad, but I wouldn't say they're devastating when it comes to attacking corners. Or I mean, obviously they scored with a header from the Lascelles, but that wasn't a set piece. It did come. Did it come from a? I think it did come from a corner, and the cross didn't reach anyone, and it was put back in. And yeah, they're not too bad defending. I either got Martin Dubravka between the sticks, and Lascelles is sturdy. Kieran Clark's been superb. I don't think anyone would have really thought Kieran Clark would have performed as well as he has done. It's probably arguably Steve Bruce's best moment as a Newcastle United head coach when he stopped that potential exit from happening. I think Clark was linked to Crystal Palace, and there was a friendly, I'm gonna say it, Hibs, and he took Kieran Clark aside and just said, "Look, okay, I understand you want first team football. That's on the table, perhaps a pallet, but stay here. And he's come to that side, and he's done really well. So they're all right, I guess. But you do just it's more just getting hit on the counter, I think, which is the biggest issue, and the spaces appear. There's a lot of bodies on the line. There's a lot of throwing themselves in front of challenges. That kind of what you expect when you're down at the bottom. So it's not pretty defending it most of the time. But right now, it doesn't really matter. As long as the ball doesn't go in the back of the net, and Newcastle can put the ball in the right end, then that's all that matters at this point with 10, 11 games to go. I don't really care how good it is to watch. That can be a conversation for the summer.
Yeah, I would say that Brighton usually aren't really a counter-attacking team. They sort of like to slowly build it up from the back, and then try to work teams over by lots of possession and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say maybe that's the way it could happen. But another thing I wanted to ask was jumping ahead a little bit. Say if Newcastle do stay up, would Steve Bruce keep the job, or do you think he'll be given the boot?
I think he'd keep the job, and that's not based on any, inside knowledge. I think that's just my opinion. I think he's been set the task of keeping Newcastle United in the Premier League, and if he does that, whether it be by a single point or by goal difference, then he does that. And I think, there's talk of a massive payoff if he does get sacked, and that runs into probably a little bit of the thinking. But at the end of the day, if he keeps Newcastle in the Premier League and that's his remit, which it's understood it is, then he's done his job. And it doesn't. Sadly, Mike Ashley doesn't really care what Newcastle United fans think. We've had 13 years of, in my opinion, underinvestment. There's no ambition, and it is just to keep Newcastle as a Premier League side. So if Steve Bruce does that, he probably wouldn't lose his job. The big change would come when the fans get allowed back into the stadiums, because if the fans had been in the stadium this time around, it's arguable he wouldn't be in the job, because the pressure would just be too much, because he hasn't really got the majority of the backing from the fans. And there's the other side of the coin where you say, well, actually, would Newcastle perform better in the first place with fans, and they wouldn't find themselves in this position? But that's it. You open that box and you go down a whole different route with those questions. But if he keeps Newcastle in the Premier League, I think his job would be safe, and he would start the season as Newcastle United manager, definitely. Yeah.
Just to kind of maybe give some of your listeners a bit of more background on Brighton, just in terms of maybe the men to watch out for. So Yves Bissouma is basically midfield destroyer. He's, I think, 5th in the league for tackles won. He's been linked with, if you believe them, Arsenal apparently very interested in him. Real Madrid, Monaco, lots of good, top clubs there. He loves to break up play. Graham Potter has said he could definitely play in the Champions League. He's definitely a very good player in the making, and his shooting sometimes can be amazing, and then hit rose ed. But he's a very good player. Lewis Dunk, the captain and centre back, has been in very, very good form. There's renewed calls for him to get an England call up. He's just very, very solid. He scored a fantastic header against Southampton. He's actually Brighton's second top scorer with 4 goals. I think he's actually level on Neil Maupay in terms of goals in open play, because Maupay scored 3 penalties. So, he's a very, very good centre back. If you can get someone with pace running at him, that is where you can exploit him a bit. Jamie Vardy showed that in the Leicester win. But very, very solid defender. As it talked about, Adam Lallana, if he's firing on all cylinders, he's definitely a threat. And then there's got a couple of others, players who can be hit and miss. Leandro Trossard at moments can explode into a game and really hurt teams, as he showed against Southampton. And then one thing that will be interesting to see, and I saw this was actually a bit of a criticism that was levelled at Bruce, was like you said earlier, he didn't change his tactics, and Potter did in the Southampton game. So Brighton are without their wing backs in Solly March and Tarek Lamptey, both are out for the season, and they've arguably been Brighton's one of their best players this season. So they've recently switched to a back four, and they've got Big Dan Burn, who at times is like a lighthouse in the desert, not much help. And
sorry, just jumping. Did Dan Burn pick up an injury? Because I watched again briefly that game against Southampton, and he went on he went on this amazing run, but it looked like seconds before he just tweaked his hamstring. He was holding the back of it. Then he goes on this amazing run. He knocks the ball over the defender, Gazaresk. He then runs up the pitch. He does look like he's running through jelly or treacle, and then he squares it to Gross, who slips and shoots. I mean, you probably remember the chance. But he went. Did he go off? He did go off, and will he be all right for the weekend?
Yeah, so that's the thing. So he went off at halftime with a hamstring issue. We don't know how serious it is yet. And then what was interesting, so they switched from a back four and then brought on a guy who's actually a striker called Andy Zakiri, but he has played at sort of as a winger, but he was brought in at left wing back, and that completely changed the complexion of the game and showed Potter. Even though it was a kind of an enforced change, he tweaked things around tactically, and it paid dividends because the wing backs were able to bomb forward and overload Southampton's midfield a bit, and whereas the Southampton wing backs were able to bomb forward when they had less presence in midfield. And I'm Dan Burn, Potter loves him. I don't think I think there are better options. So actually, it'll be interesting to see if he starts, because Brighton were they were a better team. They were a more solid team, a more cohesive team when they had two wing backs. So it'll be interesting to see if Burn is fit. But yes, I mean, that could be an interesting one, because Zakiri is a striker, but he did his job very well at left wing back. So that could be an interesting one to see if Potter goes for a back three and then two wing backs, or a back four if Dan Burn is fit. So that could be maybe an area you could exploit.
I was going to say, is that Newcastle's best chance of exploiting that then would be to kind of target Burn in that back four?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's 6'7". He's not the most mobile. If he is okay, then yeah, if you could maybe get someone with a bit of pace running at him. I mean, Adama Traore scared the life out of him earlier this season.
Scared the life out of most people, though, I would argue.
That's true. But in particular, Dan Burn conceded an own goal. He brought Traore down in the penalty area for a penalty, got yellow carded, and was subbed off. He had a horrible day. He ran rings around him, which is no bad thing. But yes, if you can get a mobile person running at Dan Burn, Brighton could be in trouble.
Let's finish off then with your score prediction. How do you see Saturday going?
I'm going for 18-14 to Brighton. No, I'm joking. I think it will be. I'm going to go for a nervy 1-1.
1-1. Would that be good enough for Brighton? I don't think it'd be good enough for Newcastle. I mean, in terms of points on the board, okay, but it's much win for Newcastle.
Well, I mean, correct for when are Fulham playing? Fulham have got Leeds
Friday. So this all depends on this result on Friday against Leeds, doesn't it? But Leeds without Patrick Bamford potentially. So yeah, I mean, I guess the approach to this game between Newcastle and Brighton from both managers will probably change given the result of that game on Friday evening.
Yeah, and I know Leeds haven't won, I think, in a couple of years. Their record in London is horrific. They just never beat teams in London. I think the last time they did it was 2019 against QPR or something like that. So they just, So I wouldn't rely on Leeds to get the results. So it could be back down to, going into their game. There could be a chance that Fulham have win. Yeah. So
in the relegation zone at that point. So
yes. So yeah, I mean, that you'd like to think that they maybe wouldn't be affected by that, but it's definitely got to play in their mind. But yeah, I still think, I don't know, unless Brighton can just play more like they did against Southampton, I I don't know. I think it'll be a nervy draw. What about yourself?
I see Brighton winning, and I see Brighton winning comfortably. I mean, I'm pessimistic at the best of times, but I just see it clicking, and I just think when Newcastle face teams that like to go with them, and create chances, then they do struggle somewhat. And I can see Brighton winning that, and I think there's still there's pressure on Steve Bruce coming into this game, so that adds to it. And then if Fulham beat Leeds, I mean, it then goes to the next level. And goodness me, you know what I mean? It doesn't even bear thinking about if Fulham beat Leeds. So sadly, I do think Brighton will win. And Newcastle go on that international break and really in a very, very bad situation.
There you go.
So there we have it. Yes. So sorry to the neutral who was coming in at this podcast looking for some football chat about brilliant footballers. You've stumbled on the wrong episode. Rich, we do appreciate you joining us on the Everything is Black and White podcast. From a Newcastle point of view, I hope your weekend is awful.
Thank you, dear boy. Yeah, thanks for having me on.